Are you the one? Are you the one? Ladies and gentlemen, words are powerful. A single word spoken at the right time can save someone's life. But the wrong words, spoken in the exact same moment, can absolutely crush the human spirit. I'm living proof of that. Although many of you now know me, you only know me as the man that you see today. Allow me to introduce you to the Melvin Banks that you never knew. There I was, sitting at the back of Mrs. Turner's class, staring at the floor. You see, what I learned over time was that as long as I didn't make eye contact with my teachers, they wouldn't call on me. But on this day, my little ploy didn't work. As I sat at the back of the room staring at the floor from out of nowhere, Miss Turner called my name. Melvin, would you come up front and read to the class, please? Ladies and gentlemen, my worst nightmare had just begun. I walked to the front of the classroom slowly. It was almost sheepishly. And I'll never forget the wave of emotion that swept over me. My heart was racing, sweat beating up on my forehead. As I stood at the front of the room holding my book, my hands literally trembled with fear. I stared down at the pages, stuttering and stumbling a bit. I tried to sound a few words out, but I couldn't. And there in front of all of my classmates, in front of all of my friends, my little secret had been exposed. I couldn't read. And I'll never forget what happened in the days and the weeks following that. You see, at some point, Mrs. Turner had contacted my parents. She informed them of all of my learning struggles. See, to go along with the fact that I couldn't read, I couldn't write very well. And to be quite honest with you, math and I are still mortal enemies. But my father, who was a good man and a great dad, he decided to do what any great dad would do. He was going to take it upon himself to teach me how to read. There was only one small problem with that. My dad, who was a hulk of a man who served in the U.S. Army for many years as a captain, fighting tours in both Korea and Vietnam. Let's just say Dad was better suited leading men into battle than he was to try and teach that little boy how to read. See, he didn't possess the patience or the compassion to do so. And one day when I was in the depth of my learning struggles, when my confidence was at its lowest, I sat across from my father at the kitchen table. And as we sat there, he grew frustrated with me. And in his frustration, he slammed his hand down on the table and he shouted, "Jesus, son, you can teach a dog to read." I want you to imagine that little boy hearing that come from his father, his hero. It absolutely crushed me. I began rationalizing in my mind that if you could teach a dog to read, but you couldn't teach me, well, something must be wrong with me. I must be dumb. And I carried that around as my belief for many years. I never really gave or expected much of myself because, to be quite honest with you, I didn't think that I had much to give. At least not until Miss Stevens came along. Now, Miss Stevens, she was a different kind of teacher. She was an older lady, but she exuded energy. She was passionate, not only about education, but about ensuring that each and every child that she came into contact with, that they knew that they were gifted and that they had something special to offer the world. I'll never forget what she did for me one day that changed the trajectory of my life. We were working on math problems. And as I sat at my desk, struggling from problem to problem, she came strolling down the aisle behind me. When she got to me, she just stopped, stood over my shoulder, and watched me work. She didn't say a word. And somehow at that moment, by some miracle, some act of divine intervention, I got a problem right. What she did next changed the way I saw myself forever. She didn't make a fuss. She didn't cause a big scene. She simply leaned over, put her arm around my shoulder, gave me a little hug, and she whispered very gently into my ear, "You see, I told you you were smart." Ladies and gentlemen, I had heard that statement many times before, but never about me. In an instant, the way that I saw myself completely changed. Now, don't get me wrong, I was never a straight A student. But now, because of Mrs. Stevens, I believe that I could be. I was never the top of my class, but now I started to believe that I was capable. I never graduated valedictorian or magna cum laude. But what I gained from having come into contact with Miss Stevens was something far more valuable. Belief in myself. A belief that was born out of her belief in me. And ladies and gentlemen, that one moment in time, that one snapshot in history has convinced me of this one thing. Every child, every young person is one caring teacher, one committed adult away from becoming a success story. But the question that I have to ask you, the question that each of us must answer as adults is, are you the one? Are you the one to be the calming voice of reassurance for a child that's lost confidence in themselves? Are you the one to reignite the flame of curiosity and a joy of learning in the mind of a child when it's been blown out by the bitter winds of life? Are you the one to help a child to see himself for who he is and what he's capable of becoming? Ladies and gentlemen, are you the one? Madam Toastmaster.